joined Reverend Jason Shelton's renaming of this hymn, Answering the Call of Love. The promise of the Spirit, faith, hope, and love abide, and so every soul is blessed and made whole. The truth in our hearts is our God, answering the call. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one, emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. Sometimes we build a barrier to keep love tightly bound, corrupted by fear, unwilling to hear, denying the beauty we found. Answering the call, we are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one, united by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. A bright new day is dawning, when love will not divide. Reflections of grace in every embrace, fulfilling the vision divine. Answering the call, we are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one, united by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. We are answering the call of love. Please take a moment and greet your neighbors.
Come into the circle of love and justice. Come into the community of mercy, holiness, and health. Come and you shall know peace and joy.
We gather in reverence before the wonder of life, the wonder of this moment, the wonder of being together, so close, yet so apart. Each hidden in our own secret chamber, each listening, each trying to speak, yet none fully understanding, none fully understood. We gather in reverence before all intangible things that eyes see not, nor ears can detect, that hands can never touch, that space cannot hold, and time cannot measure. Now, before we continue, the youth group has a request. We love and appreciate all your support and enthusiasm, but in this service, we ask that you show that in a slightly different way. So for the duration of the next hour and a half, whenever you like something, instead of clapping, we have 3 alternatives. You can either applaud in sign language, snap, or rub your hands together like so. And with that, enjoy the rest of the service.
I'd like to invite any kids or anybody who is young at heart and wants to participate in the Story for All Ages to come up front with me, please. Just those three. Yeah. Perfect. All right. Yeah, if y'all want to have a seat. We are going to be reading this amazing book called 10,000 Dresses by Marcus Hubert. First of all, everybody meet Bailey. This is Bailey. Say hi, Bailey. Hi, Bailey. Every night, Bailey dreamed about dresses. A long staircase led to a red Valentine castle, and on each stair was a brand new dress just waiting to be tried on. 10,000 dresses in all, and each one different. The first dress was made of crystals. When Bailey slipped the dress on, the crystals clinked against each other like millions of tiny bells. And when sunlight hit the dress just right, rainbows jumped out. With all her heart, Bailey loved the dress made of crystals that flashed rainbows in the sun. When Bailey woke up, she went to find Mother. Mother was in the kitchen cutting out coupons. "Mom, I dreamt about a dress," said Bailey. "Uh-huh," said her mother. "A dress made of crystals that flashed rainbows in the sun." "Uh-huh. And I was wondering if you would buy me a dress like that." "Bailey, what are you talking about? You're a boy. Boys don't wear dresses." "But I don't feel like a boy," Bailey said. "Well, you are one, Bailey, and that's that. Now go away and don't mention dresses again." Bailey went to her room. Now she would never have a dress made of crystals that flashed rainbows in the sun. That night, Bailey walked right past the crystal dress and went to the second stair. There was a dress made of lilies and roses. When she slipped it on, she saw that the sleeves were made of honeysuckles. Bailey picked a few of the blossoms to taste the little drops of honey. With all her heart, Bailey loved the dress made of lilies and roses with honeysuckle sleeves. Bailey woke up and went to find Father. He was in the backyard pulling up weeds. "Dad, I dreamt about a dress," Bailey said. "Uh-huh," said her father. "A dress made of lilies and roses with honeysuckle sleeves." "Uh-huh. And I was wondering if you could grow me a dress like that." "Bailey, what are you talking about? You're a boy. Boys don't wear dresses." "But I don't feel like a boy," she said. "Well, you are one, Bailey, and that's that. Now go away and don't mention dresses again." Bailey went to her room. Now she would never have a dress made of lilies and roses with honeysuckle sleeves. And that's a sad place to leave our story right now, but we're going to revisit the story of Bailey in a little while, and I'll ask y'all to join me again. So if you could go sit with your parents now.
Good morning. My name is Jaden. I am a member of this congregation, and it is my pleasure to welcome you here in the sanctuary, and to those and those joining us online to worship this morning. In order to reach a wider community than those able to be physically present on Sunday morning, portions of this service are live streamed and available on YouTube and on our website at thefun.org. Before I continue, let me remind you to silence your cell phones. As Unitarian Universalists, As Unitarian Universalists, our spiritual paths vary, but in this congregation we have made a covenant together. We affirm our interdependence, celebrate our differences, and work for justice. We deepen our relationships as we create a compassionate, welcoming community, nurture spiritual growth, and act on our values in the broader world. I want to extend a special welcome to visitors worshiping with us this morning. We ask you to wear the paper name tags because it helps us get to know you better. If you are seeking a spiritual home, we hope that you may find it here. Whether you are new to Unitarian Universalism or visiting from another UU congregation, we invite you to stop by the welcome table after the service to have questions answered. People become members of this congregation by signing the membership book and supporting the church with their time and finances. If you are considering joining the church, please talk to our assistant minister, Holly Miller. There she is. Following the service, we hope everyone will enjoy coffee and fellowship in the social area, where you will also find information about current opportunities for engagement and reflection. There are a number of announcements in the weekly bulletin, which I hope you will take home and read. Now, we have a short insertion into this order of service. We are going to have a brief stewardship moment from Elizabeth Learson. I don't know how to pronounce that, sorry. A former member of the youth group of this church. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. My name's Elizabeth Lyserson. I've been a member of this congregation for either 30 years or 1 month exactly, depending on whether you think the starting date for membership is birth or signing the book. And it feels a little presumptuous for me to tell you about giving money to the church because I spent decades living off your generosity here. You gave money to fund my RE programs, my OWL classes, the youth group, coming of age, and I made art projects and ate pizza. I quite literally grew up in those programs in this church. To give just 2 examples, thanks to OWL, I was the only person in my circle of friends in high school who actually understood how and if different methods of birth control worked. And running the youth adult committee was my go-to example of leadership experience in every interview I went to, all the way through, I think, the end of college. So I like to think that I got your money's worth. And while I also like to think that I fully repaid your investment in me with my contributions to my own Youth Sunday services, I'm also willing to entertain the notion that I could only coast on that for about a dozen years. So when I moved back to Nashville last summer, I decided to try out being a real adult member of this congregation. And that meant figuring out what I had to contribute. The first thing I did was sign up to be a TA for RE classes, and I have this space now where I get to hang out with 8-year-olds and talk about everything from whether atheists are allowed to act out Bible stories. I think they can, but the debate is ongoing, to how natural selection works. And for that class, I got to hide little worms that were made out of colored pieces of string in the grass in front of the Morgan House. And I like to think I channeled the volunteers who hid Easter eggs for me in that same patch of grass about 25 years ago. The second thing I did was agree to be a coming-of-age mentor. I told June Dye a few weeks ago that that makes her a grand mentor because she was my mentor back in the day. And I'm not sure what she got out of it. But I'll say this, if you'd ever like to have a really thoughtful conversation about how to live a moral life without believing in God, sign up to be a coming-of-age mentor and head to Bongo Java with your mentee on a Saturday afternoon. It's worth it. The last thing I did was pledge. I have to admit, I only made my first ever payment on my first ever pledge to the church earlier this month. And technically, it was charged to my credit card, and I haven't gotten the bill yet, so I haven't really given the church anything. But The only way I can be sure that I was a part of the group that helped give the staff the raise that they've been deserving is to pay my credit card bill this month. So I will, because I like to think that's what grown-up members of this congregation do. Thank you.
I would like to encourage all of you to take a deep breath. And I'd like to take this time to welcome you into a space of quiet reflection. As you become aware of yourself in this loving community, if you notice that there is a joy, a concern, a sorrow, which is so important and heartfelt that you wish to share it with us, you can do so during this time. I invite anyone who would like to come forward and light a candle. And our lay minister, Jack Bleak, will help you to do so. If you would like your joy or concern shared aloud, you can write it on one of the yellow slips of paper in the pew. As clearly as possible, please, and give the slip to me when you come forward. Spirit of life and love, God of compassion, you of many names and no name, we ask you to draw near. We feel your presence among us. We ask you to hold these joys, these concerns, and all those which lay upon our hearts unspoken. We ask you to always help us remember that perfection is not flawlessness. It is relationship and community among us and with our higher power. Blessed be, and may it be so. Each week, we provide space to support the work of this faith community through our offertory. Each month, half of the loose cash offering goes to an organization whose work supports the mission of this church. This month's Share the Plate offering supports the work of the Oasis Center. I am thrilled to be able to introduce our guests from the Oasis Center today, because it has been my life-changing experiences with Camp Anytown and the Oasis Center's outreach program, which have helped me to clarify my call to ministry. And my daughter's years in camp have shaped her career goals in racial relations and anti-oppression work. We are privileged to have Mark Dunkerley, the Chief Strategy Officer, with us to speak to us about the work of this amazing organization today. As always, we appreciate your ongoing generosity.
Well, thank you all very much for the opportunity to come out this morning. This is our kind of place. Any place that's got a Prince quote in the bulletin is a good place to be on a Sunday morning. Oasis in general, we have 23 different programs. We work with about 3,800 youth a year. I want to focus in on a couple of those programs specifically today because of the relevance. One of which is we do a lot of work with youth experiencing homelessness. They're kind of the unseen face of the homeless community. And unfortunately, this is a national stat, 40% of youth experiencing homelessness will identify somewhere on the LGBTQ spectrum. So today's story about Bailey resonates really well. It hits home because that's the very starting point of, unfortunately, a lot of our young people's journeys onto the street. So 8 years ago, we started a program specifically for LGBTQ youth. There was nothing in Nashville and a nonprofit specifically for this age group. And so we had a lot of Baileys, and we wanted to provide a space for them to feel loved and accepted and like teenagers. And as you might expect, when you're trying to put a name of a group for LGBTQI population, you're going to have a lot of challenges because you want a name that's open, that's accepting. You don't want to put limitations. You don't want it to be a certain segment. As our hymns this morning showed, it's going to be ever evolving. And so the other challenge, of course, is you have a lot of teenagers, you have a lot of creative ideas that maybe wouldn't resonate with the outside world in terms of funding. So we had a lot of different challenges, and it was getting testy, and it was getting a little heated back and forth. And then finally, one of our young people just said they were tired of a label. They were tired of trying to fit into this group. They said, why can't we just be us? Why can't it just be just us? And all of a sudden, they said, that's it, just us. That's what we're going to call the program. And so 8 years ago, we started, and we had about 20 young people that would come on a Tuesday night. And the first time, they were petrified because they weren't sure what they were going to find. What they found was a place where they could be loved and where they could all truly be just themselves. After the first year of doing that program, what we realized is that while this space that we're creating for these young people is sacred and incredibly important, if all we're doing is reaching 20 young people, we're still going to have a lot of Baileys for the rest of society. And so what we started doing is continuing to offer that safe space, but expanding our programming to go out into the communities and the systems that work directly with young people. We started a group called Students of Stonewall that are young people, and I think this service especially is fitting for us to talk about this mission, because Students of Stonewall is about young people finding their voice and using that and realizing that their voice is valuable and has power. And so these groups of young people have done everything from teach Vanderbilt residents how to create an intake form that doesn't immediately shut down the conversation, how to use welcoming language so that all of our young people can get health care. We've done in the past 3 years a training with every single middle and high school teacher in Davidson County on what it means to create a safe and accepting classroom. We are looking at creating a foster care certification so that when young people find a foster care parent that thinks they're open and affirming, they really know what that means, and so that this young person finds a family where they can truly feel loved and accepted. We're doing so many things with this program that started out of this group of dynamic young people that just wanted to be themselves and their authentic selves. And our hope is that someday soon, we may not need that program directly for those young people, because everywhere out there, because of this work, everyone will feel that they can just be themselves. And so thank you all very much for this opportunity throughout this month. I would love to talk a lot more about all of our programs, and I'm anxious to hear how the end of the story works out. Thank you all very much.
Spirit of life and love, may we find appreciation today and in our lives for our embodiment. We are physical creatures, mind, spirit, and soul housed within our bodies. Our bodies, our physical form, allow us to experience the world. Taste chocolate chip cookies fresh from the oven. Touch the warmth and smoothness of a baby's skin. Sight the blossoming colors of sunrise and sunset. Sound the laughter of friends and family. Smell the aroma of fresh baked bread. In particular today, may we find gratitude for our sexuality. May we be grateful for and appreciate our gender identity, our sexual orientation, our physical selves. May we appreciate the pleasure, the intimacy, the connection that comes with and is part of our sexuality. May we also remember that for many, sexuality can bring a variety of emotions: shame, sadness, trauma, anger, pain, and hurt. For all the joy and goodness that embodiment brings, it also has its challenges: aching joints, long-term health conditions, severe illness, and more. Today, as we honor the whole of ourselves, we also honor the whole spectrum of our sexual and spirit experience, holding the joys in all their richness and the sorrows in all their fullness in our hearts. Amen.
Children who would like to come forward for the story, come
We
on
can
down and
find
sit up
out
front
what
with
happens to
Huxley.
Bailey and see some more awesome dresses. So back to Bailey. Say hi, Bailey. That night, in her dream, Bailey walked right past the crystal dress and the dress made of lilies and roses and went to the third stair. There was a dress made of windows. One window showed the Great Wall of China and another the pyramids. With all her heart, Bailey loved the dress made of windows, which showed the Great Wall of China and the pyramids. Bailey woke up and went to find her brother. He was playing soccer with some kids. "I dreamt about a dress," said Bailey, "a dress made of windows which showed the Great Wall of China and the pyramids. You dream about dresses, Bailey? That's gross. You're a boy. But, Bailey said, but nothing. Get out of here before I kick you. So Bailey was sad. Bailey ran and ran. She ran all the way to the end of the block until she came to a house with a big blue porch. An older girl was sitting there with needles and thread and old sheets. This is Laurel, by the way. Everybody say hi, Laurel. What are you doing? Bailey asked. Making dresses, said the big girl, but it's really hard. Mine all come out looking the same. Maybe I can help, said Bailey. Bailey told Laurel, the big girl, about the dress made out of windows which showed the Great Wall of China and the pyramids. That's awesome, said Laurel, but how do we make a dress out of windows? We'll use old mirrors instead, said Bailey. So together, the girls made 2 new dresses which were covered with mirrors of all shapes and sizes. These dresses don't show us the Great Wall of China or the pyramids, said Laurel. No, said Bailey, but they do show us ourselves. You're the coolest girl I've ever met, Bailey, said Laurel. Hey, do you think you can dream up any more dresses? Bailey grinned. I think I can dream up 10,000. That's the end of our story.
So, I just want to say I'm a synesthetic, gender fluid individual, and I'm sure none of you have any idea what I just said by that. So, here I'll tell you. Synesthetic is an adjective form of the word synesthesia, which is when your senses are all entangled. Like, some people smell something when they touch a certain surface, like a fluffy dog or something, and then they smell like peanut butter. And some people see things when they hear a certain sound, like they might see the color red when they hear a flute play. I'm more of the second type of person there, and there's all kinds of types of synesthesia. But I see colors for like everything. And I mean everything. I mean, sound has colors, people have colors, taste and smell, and so does gender, which is what I'm going to talk to you about. So, to me, I see gender as the entire rainbow. Blue is female, red is male, and then there's so many others that we don't even have words for. Now, some people will say, oh, well, male and female, I recognize those. We say that kids are male or female at birth. Well, you're not always right. When you are right, it's called being cisgendered, where you identify as the gender someone else said you were at birth, based on your physical characteristics. And because you're not always right, we have other words for that. Like me, I'm gender fluid, which means, well, sometimes I'm blue, sometimes I'm red, sometimes I'm orange or green or pink. And people also like to think that gender is based off of a certain thing. They like to think, oh, well, maybe it's based off your physical characteristics. Well, I just told you, you're not always right about that. Sometimes people like to think it's based off of gender roles, which they say, oh, that's when, like, women clean the house. Or men go golfing. And they like to define you by your actions. But that's just a state of action, not a state of being. Oh, I don't understand why people think that has anything to do with gender. Now, sometimes people also like to say that it's a social construct and we just made it up for the purposes of society. But then again, that whole argument is based on gender roles, which don't mean anything. Those are based on society. In any society, maybe some societies say that women go out and work and earn all the money for the house and are the boss of the house, and that the men sit in the corner and cook. Well, that's gender roles for that society. People who study societies, like sociologists, will like to tell you that there's only physical characteristics, your sex, and gender roles, because that's all they need to look at, really, because that's in terms of society. But then biologists like to do the same thing, and I don't understand why. You'd think they'd want to find out what gender really is. And they don't. They're like, there's your physical characteristics, and then there's what you do in society, and we don't actually care what your gender really is. Well, remember how I experience gender as colors? Not everybody else does. And so they tend to miss it. But when you see it physically in your mind, you see that as a color. You can't miss it. And I just want to say, everybody seems to miss it. It's kind of sad. But really, it's nothing more or less than a color. Yes, it's as complex as the artists in the room will know. Hard to find the right exact one you're looking for. Right? You have to use all these different measurements. Ask Gail about it. If Gail doesn't mind me saying that. But even though it's as complex as a color, what makes it whatever color you choose, whether you have words for it or not in this weird language of ours. It's defined by you. You define your own self. And while other people's experiences of what makes a color blue or pink or red may influence you so that you have some sources to work from, it's you. You look at your own self and you say, I am this color. You know, like those highlighters you have. You ever had that highlighter where your friend's like, it's green, and you're like, no, it's yellow? Well, it's your highlighter, so you make the call on what color it is. No. And same with your gender. People may say, well, you look blue like a girl. And you're like, no, I'm not a girl. Well, you're not a girl because you say you aren't. And so gender is something experienced by your own self, and you have to find it out for yourself what color you truly are. Not even me who can see, can tell you. You have to decide for yourself. Yeah, thank you.
Please rise in body or in spirit and join the choir and our musicians today, our choral musicians, in singing our closing hymn, which is Turn the World Around, which is 1074 in your turquoise hymnal if you need it. We are doing the extended arrangement, so watch for the changes. Grab a shaker. Turn the world around. Yeah.
You can find the words to our chalice extinguishing at the bottom of your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, nor the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
We have a great deal more kindness than is ever spoken. The whole human family is bathed with an element of love, like a fine ether. How many persons we meet in houses whom we scarcely speak to, whom yet we honor and who honor us. How many we see in the street or sit within church, whom though silently we warmly rejoice to be with. Read the language of these wandering eyes, the heart knoweth. This service is over. Let our service continue again, renewed.